Welcome to the Journey to an ESOP and Beyond podcast, where we seek to make all things related to employee stock ownership plans both understandable and accessible. I'm your host, Jason Miller, and thank you for joining me today as we delve into ESOPs and language. I've often thought about all interactions and communication throughout my professional career as a subset of language. Every profession has its own. And while we may all be speaking English or Spanish or Russian, there are different dialects, and there's very specific regions that have very particular uses and pronunciations and idioms and other elements of language that bring additional meaning. And when you first started your ESOP journey and were exploring online, or you came here, you likely heard terms that you had never heard before, even though you understood the words that were being said. And ESOPs in and of themselves have their own dialect, their own language, and that's spread across different professions that are involved, not just in your transaction, but also afterward. And communicating those key points, those principles, that very specific dialect remains important, not just for you through your journey to an ESOP, but and beyond for your employees and the new employee owners. So today we're going to talk about language in and of itself. What is a language? How does one learn a language, and what are the stages of that? And I want you to parallel yourself as I go through these. And just to give you a highlight of kind of where this came from for our listeners, what I'm showing is the screenshot of my Duolingo streak for Russian for the last 555 days. So today I've got three segments of 5 points that line up really nicely about language, and we're going to delve right in. So I use language today very specifically rather than communication, because communication in ESOPs has a particular meaning, as I mentioned. When we say communicating your ESOP or communications about ESOP, it's how are we going to convey what we've learned or what you've learned through your ESOP transaction to your employees, as I mentioned a couple of minutes ago. And then afterwards, when we talk about communications, that's an ongoing, ever-growing, ever-evolving process in the life of an ESOP company. And there are communications committee that send out communications to employees about the value of the plan to them and what they need to know. And so language in and of itself it is super important throughout this entire process for you to get your arms around. So let's start breaking it down. So the first 5 that I'm going to mention are the 5 components of language, and you're going to find yourself in this as we're talking about it. So the first is phonology. So that's sound. What does it sound like? And you likely first heard things like 1042, and you heard things like inside note, and you heard things like ESOP compensation expense or non-cash portion of the ESOP compensation expense. And what are those? And you're likely starting to form those and repeat them back. And that goes directly into the second part of the components of language, which is phonology, which is sound. How do you say it? Morphology is word formation. So getting comfortable with the terms. And then after being able to repeat it back, that third component of language is semantics, and that's meaning. What does it mean? What does a 1042 mean? And that opens up a whole nother can of worms, so to speak. And we have a number of different episodes that Philip has done on this very podcast on 1042 with some great guests that I'd encourage you to check out. I always found the word semantics interesting because when sometimes you hear it in a way that after a long explanation or someone's trying to convey a very difficult topic, or they're agreeing without agreeing or disagreeing without agreeing, and they say it's just semantics. Semantics as a component of language is the actual meaning of the word. And so when that becomes something that's flippant, they're basically saying that's just what it means, and that may not be a great thing, in depending on what the subject matter is. So the fourth stage, or the fourth component of language, is syntax. This is grammar and sentence structure. And for a long period of time, the idea of grammar Nazis it shows up online, and how are you formulating sentences? The English language is very particular, and I've read there is a very distinct order of how you ascribe adjectives in front of a noun that's natural to native English speakers. And if you think about the words of color and size, there's a whole list of those, and inherently native English speakers know which order to put those in for it to make sense, and they do it just naturally in that sentence structure. And if they don't, it sounds strange. So the big wide green building makes sense, where the green wide big building sounds a little awkward. And that syntax can evolve over time to be more in line with the language that you're speaking. And then finally, the fifth component of language is pragmatics. This is the key part of why I wanted to share ESOPs in language. So pragmatics means language in context. My team probably gets really tired of me always saying, what's the context? Or we have to build context, or we have to help speak to or from context. And it's a common word for me in my interactions with you, with clients, and with my team. What's the context? We want to know what we're saying, not just has meaning, and doesn't just make sense, but it makes sense in light of. And that's really important in an ESOP transaction. And it's really important even afterward as an ESOP company. We get questions all the time around, well, afterwards, what should we do with if we feel like we're doing great and we have excess cash? What do we do with that? And how do we deploy it? Can we do A, B, or C with that? What's the best use? And my answer usually is my favorite banker answer, and many of you have heard that from me before, which is it depends. And the reason it depends is, and what it depends on really, is the context of the situation. If you can spell out, here is where we are, this is what we are thinking about doing with our excess cash at this point in time for these reasons, then it allows you to make a decision with confidence in context. Without that, anything that anyone says to you, or perhaps anything that you would say in that scenario without that context, is just words, or it's just a decision made in a vacuum. And these components of language are really vital for you to evaluate, where am I with this? Have I heard this term before as an advisor is speaking, as my banker is speaking, as my legal counsel is speaking, and they say something? What really are they saying? And I would encourage you, as you continue on this journey, my other largest encouragement for you is to be curious, remain curious, and get the answers to your questions. because the semantics and the pragmatics, the context of anything that is said in an ESOP transaction matter to you. And that allows you to bring it into your decision making, into your context, and then allow you to relay that back to the individuals that are helping you through this process. So the next 5 are the 5 stages of language learning. So we've talked about the components of language and kind of what they mean, and then now we're going to how are you learning this? Where are you on the scale of fluency for the ESOP language? And the first one is silent and receptive. The second is early word production. The third is speech emergence. And then the fourth is intermediate fluency. And the fifth is advanced fluency. And I know I went through those very quickly. And I'll repeat them and then I'm going to illustrate them with a reference to a movie. And so again, silent and receptive, early word production, speech emergence, intermediate fluency, and advanced fluency. And there's no better way for me to convey what this looks like in practicality than to refer to the 90s movie, The 13th Warrior, that starred Antonio Banderas. And if you've seen the movie before, you can probably imagine the scene that I'm about to describe and reference. So the setup of this particular movie, it's a retelling of the Beowulf legend. And in the beginning, this Norse-like culture, it has a visitor, an ambassador that is sent from an Arab country, Middle Eastern country. And in the midst of one of these celebrations, they talk about this great evil. And the 13 warriors get selected by a prophet or whatever she may be. And the 13th warrior is the Arab ambassador, but he doesn't understand any of the language that the other 12 and their community, that their culture is speaking. And he has to go, or there won't be success, I think is the way that it pans out. But they have a long journey ahead of them, and all 13 of them are on this journey. And there's a scene that takes place over a couple of minutes, and I'll never forget it. They're sitting around the evening, a campfire, and evening after evening it changes, and they're speaking their particular language, and I don't know what it is. It may be some Norse dialect, and it's from the perspective of Antonio Banderas, who's sitting there, and so obviously the audience probably doesn't speak it. And then it moves on to another scene or another cut to another day, another evening around the campfire, and he's listening. So this is the silent and receptive piece of the stages of language learning. And then you can see his eyes narrow, and then they keep speaking, and then an English word pops up to convey to the audience that he's starting to understand what they're saying. And his lips don't quite move, but I think you want them to, as he's trying to kind of reproduce the words. And then it kind of skips over this speech emergence, and they cut to another campfire scene, and there's more English words, and then they cut to another campfire scene, and there's he understands the entirety of the conversation, what they're saying. One of them hurls kind of an insult at him, and they all kind of laugh, and then I would say that he jumps through an intermediate fluency to advanced fluency because while he responds slowly, he responds deliberately and returns the insult with another. And the person who first threw the first barb says, how did you learn our language? And he rushes at him, and he wants to get confrontational. And the Antonio Banderas's character says, I listened. And then the rest of the interaction within that group for the entirety of the movie is obviously in English, which it's supposed to imitate that it's their particular language. And so he got to advanced fluency very quickly. And the speed at which he got caught up was probably incubated and necessitated by the emergency of his mission, of his quest. And you hopefully have time, or have built time into your process and into your journey to learn the language of ESOPs on a longer pace that isn't so emergent. But I do hope that you are picking up more and more every time you listen to us, every time that you read a white paper, every time you do some research, and every time that you interact with your other professionals that you've chosen to sit at your table for your ESOP journey. One other thing that I want to say about dialects and ESOP as a dialect, and why that's important. I remember as a banker, clients would often ask, why should we work with your team? Why would we need to consider what's the benefit of doing that? And I would often say that we were translators, so we understand and speak the language of credit, of loans, and also we speak the language of ESOPs, so that when we're communicating internally with decision makers around funding your ESOP transaction, or helping to provide some financing for an ESOP company later in its life cycle, that we can accurately convey what repurchase obligation is, and what the relevance of that is in an initial transaction compared to a mature ESOP company that's 20 or 30 years old and are facing different circumstances related to repurchase obligations. And communicating those details to other people that are making decisions or are doing things for you and for your company is a very great asset. And it doesn't just apply to bankers, but also to your legal counsel. You may have a great corporate attorney, and their specialty has been in helping you with organizing your company and providing advice and the standard business practices that you need a corporate attorney for on retainer. But if they can't spell ERISA, that particular attorney may not be the right one to choose to help generate the documents required for the plan in your ESOP journey. And they're going to work alongside each other. It's not a replacement. You just need an interpreter or translator that understands the dialect of ESOPs in that as well. And your TPA, when we think about your 401k third-party administrator today, do they understand the language of ESOPs as it relates to the compliance and the needs for the allocation under the plan and to administer the ESOP and or the 401k? It is absolutely vital that your professionals and who you choose, again, to sit at your table can speak the language. A thought just occurred to me in that, how do you evaluate who to do that? Is it just that they are ESOP professionals? Is it just that they have an ESOP division? Is it just the guy that I heard on a podcast that talked about this? And the understanding of ESOPs itself is really important. But it's also vital for you when you're choosing your providers that they understand where your company is, in its own life cycle, and what this transaction is bringing, what changes the potential transaction is bringing to you. And I go back to bankers again. My career has been mainly in banking. And I think about the life cycle of a company, and the changes that occur in how you interact with a banking team, depending on the size of your company and the growth of your company and the industry that you're in. And when you're first starting out, you're not going to need a corporate banker. But you do need someone who understands the struggles of running a small business and are able to help with those particular products and advice to get you the loans that you need or the services that you need at that juncture. And as you grow, you're just like your company evolves, your needs evolve. And not it's unlikely as you grow from a small business to a 7-figure business to a 10-figure business to a 9-figure business that your banker is going to follow you from day one to day X, whatever that might be. As your company grows, you're going to have different needs from that professional. And they have to understand where you are on that curve. And again, for bankers, it's kind of delineated by size and complexity of company. And I think a lot of you as successful business owners know when you've outgrown a provider. And I just want to say that it's okay. It's actually a great thing that you outgrow your providers, and they're going to change from when you start. As you move to finish or continue in your and beyond, after an ESOP transaction or after a change of ownership. But it is crucial that you have the right people in that seat, and then that they also have a team or an understanding of an ESOP specifically as you're entertaining an ESOP transaction, because things change. And if you know the rules of the game, and you've heard me say this before, if you know the rules of the game, then you know better how to play. And you need the team that can speak to that level of fluency in their own language, whether it's banking or legal or the third-party administration or your accountant. And this is an opportunity as you're thinking about an exit to explore with your current providers the depth of their teams, and or are they going to be in the right place, and how do you need to supplement that to honor your relationships, because I believe that's really important too. So we get to our third set of 5 for our 5-5-5 today of language and ESOPs. How do you learn this language? How do you pick up this vernacular? How can you get from just word formation or phonetics to word formation to pragmatics to be able to use it in context, so that when you're sitting around a campfire and people are saying things, that you not only understand but can participate in the conversation with them, because you are the most important person at the table. Your voice matters more than anyone else at the table. And that should be honored. So how do you improve your voice and participate in this particular language of ESOPs? The first is to set a clear and personal goal. I would like to understand more about. And friend, you're in a great place. We are very grateful that you've been listening into the podcast. We have a lot of resources here for you to go back to listen and re-listen to. But you get to set your goal of, I really need to understand this topic. I really need to understand this terminology. Second is choose the right learning environment. And again, this is one way to learn. And there are other ways that may be more applicable to you. Rather than watching or listening, It may be going to conferences before a transaction so that you can listen to others that have been in your shoes, that you can meet people in a place that is conducive to learning about ESOPs. And I would encourage you to do that through the ESOP Association, the National Center for Employee Ownership, or ESCA. And just look for those. But your right learning environment may be different than someone else's, but think about what's right for you to learn this language. Third is immerse yourself in the language, just like Antonio Banderas was in the 13th Warrior, had to sit around that campfire with those other gentlemen, those other warriors. There's no better way than to immerse yourself in that. And the ways that you can pick that up, there are a lot of publications that are relatively inexpensive through the NCEO. Google can sometimes be your friend. I know you often hear me say, Google is not your friend, but it is, or ChatGPT. Whatever you can, take some time, expend some effort in immersing yourself into the ESOP world, into the ESOP language. And this is probably the most important, and I hope that it's one of the most helpful things about what we do here, and that's build consistency into your routine. However you've chosen to learn, and whatever ways that you can immerse yourself into the ESOP language, the next is being consistent. And we are making a concerted effort to keep up with our content release on a weekly schedule and a cadence, so that you always have something new to listen into as you run, or as you drive, or as you sit in your office, or you sit at home and think and contemplate about whether or not an ESOP is right for you. Or if you're on the other side of the transaction and go, I really hope that I can pick up something today from Jason and Mackenzie and Philip. But do it consistently, and then we're going to do our part to remain consistent and help you in that. And fifth is celebrate your progress and stay inspired. When you hear terms, or when you come here and we start talking about a particular topic, and you're like, I know that, I read about that. It is a great way for you to celebrate what you've already learned and how far you've come from the first time that you heard something really strange about repurchase obligations and 1042 and inside notes and note flips and all of those particulars. And I hope that those little moments of going, I got it, or I get more of it, help you to stay inspired. And it should be an inspiring journey for you. Both up to and afterward. And I applaud all of you, each of you, for considering an employee ownership exit for yourself, or transition. It's not always an exit. It doesn't always have to be. But that is an inspirational and aspirational way to consider the legacy and culture that you've built. And I applaud you for this journey that you're on, and grateful to be a part of it. So in conclusion today, I hope that you found this helpful. I hope that there was something that you could take away from today's topic that allows you to celebrate your progress on your journey to an ESOP and beyond. So thank you again. Like, subscribe, share this podcast episode with a friend, interact with us at journeytoanesop.com. I would love to hear from you what you want to hear from us to help you further on your journey. Thank you.